Snow settles silently on the northern mountains as a former Navy SEAL shuts off his engine for the last time. Inside a house buried in stone, a German shepherd named Valko refuses to step forward, muscles tight, ears locked on something the ground is hiding. Beneath the floor, pressure builds where no one is supposed to look. Far below, machines hum, measuring profit, not consequence. A single letter from a dead wife has led Noah here, into a place that doesn't fight winter, but understands it. And when the mountain answers back, it won't roar. It will crack, quietly, precisely, and only once. What happens next will turn instinct into evidence, grief into responsibility, and a forgotten structure into a second chance at standing upright again. Before we begin, tell us where you're watching from. Drop your country in the comments below, and if you believe some miracles don't arrive loudly, but listen first, subscribe now and share this story with someone who still needs hope. The city was already awake when Noah Kincaid walked out of the Naval Administration building, but it showed no sign of noticing him. It was early winter in San Diego. The sky hung low and grey, heavy with a marine layer that softened the edges of buildings and muted the color of the morning. The air smelled faintly of salt, carried in from the coast, mixed with exhaust and cooling asphalt. Palm trees along the street swayed lazily, their fronds rattling in a wind that felt more tired than cold. Traffic moved in steady lines. People crossed the street with coffee cups in hand. Somewhere nearby, a radio played a song that did not match the day. Noah stood on the sidewalk for a moment, a small cardboard box tucked under his arm, and watched the automatic glass doors slide shut behind him. That was all. No ceremony, no farewell, no one to mark the moment. Inside the box were a few personal items cleared from his locker, a folded sweatshirt, a pair of gloves, a notebook he had not opened in years. Nothing that explained who he had been or what he had done. Nothing that needed explaining. Noah Kincaid was 39 years old. He stood a little over 6 feet tall, his frame lean and compact, built for endurance rather than size. Years of training had stripped unnecessary movement from him. He stood evenly balanced, shoulders squared, weight distributed as if the ground beneath him might shift without warning. His dark hair was cut short, threaded with early gray at the temples. A trimmed beard followed the sharp lines of his jaw. His face carried the angles of a man accustomed to focus. High cheekbones, a straight nose, eyes set deep and steady. Those eyes had learned to observe without reacting. For most of his adult life, Noah had belonged to systems that did not ask how he felt. They told him where to go, what to do, and when to act. That clarity had shaped him. It had kept him alive. Now, standing alone outside the building, he felt something unfamiliar. Not fear, not relief, but a lack of direction that sat quietly in his chest. Unassigned. He adjusted his grip on the box and walked to his truck. The funeral took place 2 weeks later, under a sky that could not commit to rain or light. The cemetery lay on a gentle rise overlooking the city, its paths carefully maintained, its hedges trimmed into orderly lines. The grass was green in a way that felt almost deliberate, sustained by irrigation systems that ignored drought and season. A cold wind moved between the headstones, lifting the edges of coats and dresses, pressing against black fabric. Sarah Kincaid was 37 when she died. She had been tall and slender, with a posture that suggested quiet confidence rather than fragility. Her hair was chestnut brown, usually pulled back into a loose knot that never stayed in place for long. Strands always escaped to frame her face. Her skin was pale and freckled easily in the yin, especially across her forearms. She had eyes the color of wet soil after rain, brown, steady, observant. Sarah did not draw attention to herself. She noticed things instead. She worked in archival research, spending long hours in county offices and storage rooms, reading documents most people never thought to question. Old land deeds, engineering plans, letters that had lost their urgency with time but not their meaning. She had patience, and she had persistence. When she asked questions, she did so carefully, as if she understood the weight of answers before hearing them. At home, she was different. She laughed easily, sometimes unexpectedly. She teased Noah about his habits, his boots aligned perfectly by the door, towels folded with unnecessary precision, grocery lists written like operational checklists. She told him he took life too seriously, and he never argued. He knew she was right. Her death had been sudden. An accident, the doctor said. The word arrived softly, spoken with care, as if tone could lessen the finality. Noah stood beside her grave with his hands clasped behind his back, a posture ingrained by years of standing through briefings and ceremonies. He did not cry, he did not speak. He nodded when people offered condolences, receiving their words without holding on to them. His attention stayed fixed on the sound of gravel shifting beneath his shoes, on the pressure of cold air against his face. Grief did not come as he expected. It did not arrive as a wave or a breaking point. It was quieter than that. It felt like standing in a room where all the furniture had been removed, learning the hard way where things used to be. Only one presence grounded him. Valko sat at his side. The German Shepherd was 6 years old, tall and powerfully built, his body lean and athletic. His coat was a mix of dark sable and silver gray, thick along his shoulders and back, fading to a lighter cream at his chest and muzzle. A dusting of white had begun to appear around his snout, giving him a look of age that did not match his strength. His ears stood alert even when he was still. His amber eyes followed movement quietly, taking in posture and intention more than faces. Valko did not pull at the leash. He did not whine or pace. He pressed his weight lightly against Noah's leg, solid and steady. Noah had trained him years earlier, during a period when structure still made sense. Valko was disciplined, responsive, and unusually perceptive. He watched people closely, reading tension and breath the way others read expressions. Around strangers, he was neutral and calm. Around Noah, he stayed close without crowding, as if aware that proximity mattered more than attention. After the service ended, people drifted away in small groups. Conversations resumed too quickly. The sky darkened. The ground crew arrived. Noah stayed until there was nothing left to witness. That night, the apartment felt unfamiliar. Sarah's coat still hung by the door. A mug sat in the sink where she had left it. Dust had already begun to settle on surfaces that once carried intention. The space was unchanged, and yet it no longer felt inhabited. Noah packed without ceremony. Clothes, tools, documents he did not yet have the energy to examine. He did not take photographs. Before dawn, the truck was loaded. Valko jumped into the passenger seat without hesitation, circling once before sitting upright, eyes forward. They left the city as the sky began to lighten. The highway stretched north, lanes thinning as buildings gave way to open land. Billboards disappeared. Cell towers grew sparse. The air cooled as elevation increased, the scent of salt replaced by pine and damp earth. Noah drove in silence. He was not running. He was not searching. He needed distance, enough that the noise of the world could no longer reach him without effort. By the time they reached the edge of the forest, the weather had shifted. Clouds thickened. Light filtered through in muted bands. A cold wind moved through the trees, carrying the sound of branches knocking gently against one another. Noah pulled off onto a gravel road and stopped. The rented cabin sat just beyond the tree line, small and weathered. Its wooden exterior had grayed with age. The place smelled faintly of pine sap and old wood. It was the kind of structure that endured rather than welcomed. Valko jumped down first, stretching before lowering his nose to the ground. He moved in a slow circle, attentive but calm. Noah stood beside the truck, hands in his jacket pockets, breathing in the quiet. This was far enough. Beyond the forest, the mountains rose in softened shapes, their outlines blurred by mist. They did not feel hostile. They did not feel kind. They simply remained. And somewhere in that stillness, something began to pay attention. The cabin settled into Noah Kincaid's life, with the quiet efficiency of something that had never expected company. It stood a short distance from the tree line, low and rectangular, its wood darkened by years of rain and sun. The roof sloped gently, patched in places where shingles had been replaced by hands that valued function over appearance. Inside, the air carried the faint scent of pine resin and old smoke, not unpleasant, just persistent. The place felt used, but not neglected, as if it had learned to endure without asking for attention. Noah fell into routine quickly. Habit had always been his most reliable anchor. He rose before dawn, brewed coffee strong enough to bite back, and stepped outside while the forest was still deciding whether to wake. Frost often clung to the ground in thin, silvery patterns, crunching softly under his boots. Valko followed him everywhere, moving with unspoken coordination, stopping when Noah stopped, watching when Noah scanned the perimeter of Siu, the clearing. The mountains beyond the trees were never fully visible. Mist settled along their slopes each morning, lifting slowly as the sun climbed. By midday, the outlines sharpened just enough to suggest depth without offering detail. Noah noticed the way sound behaved here. Wind did not travel straight. It bent, folded, and returned, carrying distant creaks and knocks that could not be easily traced to a source. He took work when it came. Fence repairs for a neighboring property, clearing fallen branches after a storm, patching a shed roof before the next snowfall. He spoke little, answered questions directly, and left when the work was done. People learned to trust him without learning much about him. Valko, however, began to change. At first, it was subtle. The dog would pause at the edge of the clearing in the early mornings, body still, ears angled forward. He stared toward the mountains, head slightly raised, as if listening for a sound that had not yet arrived. Noah noticed, but dismissed it. Dogs, he knew, reacted to things humans missed all the time. Scents carried on shifting air, small animals moving beneath the brush. Then Valko started avoiding certain trails. Paths Noah had walked repeatedly without incident suddenly brought resistance. The dog slowed, planted his feet, and refused to move forward. When Noah tested the leash gently, Valko held firm, muscles coiled but calm. There was no fear in him, no frantic energy, only refusal. Noah adjusted, choosing alternate routes without comment. He did not believe in omens. He believed in causes. If Valko sensed something, there would be a reason for it, even if Noah could not yet identify it. Nights brought a different kind of unease. The forest grew louder after dark, not with obvious threats, but with layered sound. Branches rubbed together. Wind pressed through narrow gaps, creating low, resonant tones that lingered longer than expected. One night, as Noah lay awake listening, Valko lifted his head and released a single low howl. It was not loud. It did not echo. It vibrated instead, passing through the cabin walls and into the ground beneath. Noah sat up, heart steady but alert. Valko did not move again. He lay back down, calm as if nothing had happened. The next morning, Noah met the cabin's owner while loading firewood. Margaret Hale was in her late 60s, small-framed and wiry, her gray hair cut short and practical. Her face was lined in a way that spoke of weather rather than age. She wore a heavy jacket several sizes too large and gloves patched at the fingertips. When she smiled, it was brief and assessing, as if habit had taught her not to offer warmth without reason. "You're the quiet one," she said, setting a crate of supplies down near the porch. "Figured you'd be." Noah nodded. Cabin solid. Margaret glanced toward the trees, then at Valko, who sat beside Noah, ears forward, eyes steady. "Dog's alert," she said. "That's good. Weather turns strange up here." She did not elaborate, and Noah did not ask. As days passed, Valko's attention sharpened. He tracked the wind more than movement now, lifting his nose when gusts shifted direction. On 2 occasions, he woke Noah before dawn, pacing quietly near the door until Noah followed him outside. Each time, the air felt heavier, charged in a way Noah could not quite explain. Nothing happened, no trees fell, no storms arrived, and yet, Valko remained tense until the feeling passed. Noah began to watch him more closely. Valko's posture changed when they faced the mountains. His tail lowered, his ears angled back slightly, then forward again, adjusting constantly. He was not reacting to threat. He was monitoring it. One afternoon, while repairing a fence line near the edge of the forest, Noah felt it himself for the first time. A vibration underfoot so faint he might have dismissed it as imagination if Valko had not stopped at the exact same moment. Dog's muscles tightened. His head lifted sharply. The sensation passed within seconds, leaving only the memory of pressure rather than sound. Noah stood still, tools in hand, breathing slow. Years earlier, during training exercises, he had learned to recognize the difference between noise and signal. Most people never noticed until it was too late. He had survived by paying attention. That evening, he sat at the small kitchen table with a notebook open in front of him. He wrote nothing. He listened instead. Wind moved through the trees unevenly. Somewhere, far off, something shifted. Earth settling, perhaps, or rock adjusting under long-held weight. Valko lay at his feet, head raised, eyes open. Noah did not speak. He slept lightly that night. Dreams came in fragments, not memories of combat, not images of Sarah. Just shapes and angles, earth pressing inward, space narrowing and expanding without warning. He woke before dawn, heart steady but alert, to find Valko already awake, seated near the door. The dog's gaze was fixed north. Outside, the air had changed. Cold pressed harder, sharper than before. The mountains were hidden entirely behind low cloud, their presence suggested rather than seen. Noah dressed and stepped out onto the porch. The forest was still, too still. Even the birds had not yet begun their morning calls. Valko moved ahead of him, stopping at the edge of the clearing. He did not cross it. Instead, he sat, back straight, ears forward, waiting. Noah followed his line of sight. Nothing moved, and yet the sense of pressure returned, stronger now, not danger exactly, more like anticipation. Noah exhaled slowly. He did not know what Valko was listening to. He only knew that the dog had never been wrong about when to pay attention. Behind them, the cabin stood quiet and unchanged. Ahead, the mountains remained hidden, withholding whatever lay beneath their slopes. For the first time since arriving, Noah felt something other than distance. He felt watched, not by eyes, but by presence. Valko shifted slightly, pressing closer to his leg. Whatever the mountains were holding, the dog had already begun to hear it. The letter arrived on a morning that felt deliberately ordinary. The sky was pale and overcast, the kind of light that flattened color without fully dimming it. Frost clung to the edges of the clearing, thin and brittle, cracking softly beneath Noah Kincaid's boots as he walked to the mailbox at the end of the gravel drive. The forest was quiet, but no longer empty in the way it had been his first days here. It held sound now, subtle shifts, distant settling, the low movement of air threading through branches. The mailbox contained 3 things: a grocery flyer creased down the center, a utility notice printed on thin paper, and a thick envelope that did not belong. It was heavier than the others, stiff with multiple sheets inside. The paper was off-white, the kind used by offices that valued permanence over friendliness. In the upper left corner, a return address was printed in small, precise type: State Heritage and Land Records Office. Noah frowned. Anything official tended to mean complication, fees, deadlines, explanations he did not feel prepared to give. He tucked the envelope under his arm and turned back toward the cabin. Valko was waiting near the porch. The dog was standing, not sitting, his body angled slightly forward, ears lifted and still. His amber eyes were fixed on the envelope with an intensity Noah had only seen before moments that demanded immediate attention. When Noah stepped closer, Valko shifted to block the doorway, placing himself squarely between Noah and the cabin. "That's new," Noah said quietly. Valko did not move. Noah waited a moment, then reached down and rested a hand on the dog's shoulder. The muscles beneath his palm were tense, coiled but controlled. Valko's gaze did not waver. Noah stepped aside instead and leaned against the porch railing. He slid a finger beneath the edge of the envelope and tore it open. The letter inside was written in formal language stripped of personality. It informed him that Sarah Kincaid had been listed as a secondary heir to a property recently cleared through probate review. The property was described only as a wooden structure located in a mountainous forest zone, unoccupied for nearly 3 decades and currently misclassified under non-residential records. No estimated value was listed. No photographs were included, only coordinates. Noah read the letter twice, then again, more slowly. A house, not land alone, not money, a structure. Sarah had never mentioned a house. She had never spoken about family property or unresolved inheritance. She was careful that way. When she carried questions, she did so quietly, turning them over in her mind until she understood where they belonged. Noah folded the letter once and slid it back into the envelope. "Coincidence," he said aloud, the words sounding firmer than he felt. Valko remained in place. Noah stepped around him and entered the cabin. He set the envelope on the small kitchen table and went about his morning routine: coffee, tools checked, notes reviewed. He forced himself to focus on what could be completed within reach. An hour later, when he returned to the table, the envelope was on the floor. It lay a few feet from where he had left it, nudged off the table by a paw print faintly visible in the dust. Noah stared at it, irritation prickling at the edges of his calm. "That's enough," he muttered. Valko stood nearby, trembling, not from fear, but from tension. His tail was still, his ears were rigid. His gaze was fixed not on Noah, but toward the forest beyond the cabin. Noah picked up the envelope. He did not like the way his pulse had quickened. That night, Noah dreamed for the first time since Sarah's funeral. He stood in a narrow space he did not recognize, walls close on either side. The air was cool, steady, pressing lightly against his skin. Above him, he could hear wind, muffled as if filtered through layers of earth and stone. Valko stood several feet ahead, facing a darkness that felt deeper than shadow. Then the dog turned and looked back at him. Not alert, not afraid, expectant. Noah woke with his heart pounding, the taste of iron sharp in his mouth. Valko was sitting upright beside the bed, already awake, already watching. Outside, the wind shifted direction. Valko released a single, low sound, then lay back down as if nothing had happened. Noah did not sleep again. The next morning, he called the number printed at the bottom of the letter. The woman who answered introduced herself as Marianne Bell, a records coordinator. Her voice was even and practiced, the voice of someone accustomed to explaining complexity without inviting argument. She confirmed the details of the letter and added context with careful restraint. The property, she explained, had been tied to a family trust on Sarah's maternal side. Its status had remained obscured by outdated zoning classifications and incomplete transfers. No one had lived there long enough to reclassify it. No one had officially declined it either. When Noah asked why Sarah had never mentioned it, Marianne paused. "Many people don't," she said finally. "Some properties don't feel real until someone is asked to choose." After the call ended, Noah sat at the table for a long time. Valko rested his head against Noah's knee, the weight familiar and grounding. Noah stared at the wood grain beneath his fingers, tracing lines worn smooth by years of use. He did not imagine escape. He did not imagine starting over. He imagined a question, one he could answer or avoid for the rest of his life. That afternoon, he drove into town to gather supplies and stopped at a small cafe near the hardware store. Margaret Hale was there, seated by the window, with a mug cupped between her hands. "You look like someone who didn't sleep," she said without preamble. Noah nodded. "Got a letter." Margaret's eyes flicked to Valko, then back to Noah. "Those tend to find you up here," she said. "Mountains don't keep secrets well." She did not ask what the letter said. When Noah returned to the cabin, he spread the letter and a map across the table. He entered the coordinates into his GPS, then cross-referenced them with an old topographic chart he kept folded in his pack. The location lay further north, deeper into the mountains, beyond the maintained roads. Valko watched every movement. That night, as Noah hovered over his laptop, preparing to file the digital form declining the property, Valko reacted instantly. His body stiffened, his ears rose. A low vibration traveled through his chest, barely audible but unmistakable. Noah froze. He had spent years learning to ignore internal noise, fear, doubt, hesitation, until only the task remained. But Valko was not internal noise. He was external data. Noah shut the laptop. "Fine," he said quietly. "We look. That's all." Valko relaxed, just slightly. 2 weeks later, Noah loaded the truck. He packed deliberately this time. Tools instead of just clothes. Food for several days. A lantern with fresh batteries. Rope. Maps printed on paper. Valko jumped into the passenger seat without hesitation. As they drove north, the road narrowed, asphalt giving way to gravel, gravel thinning into something barely maintained. Cell service vanished without announcement. The forest closed in, trees leaning closer, their branches forming a canopy that muted sound. Noah kept his eyes on the road. Valko stared ahead, ears lifted, already listening. Somewhere beyond the bend of the mountain road, something long forgotten waited to be noticed. The road north did not announce its change. It narrowed gradually, shedding lanes and markings the way a river sheds its banks, until Noah Kincaid realized he was driving more on memory and judgment than on signage. The asphalt grew uneven, patched in places where weather had won small, persistent battles. Gravel replaced pavement without warning. The truck rattled softly beneath him, suspension responding to terrain that no longer cared about comfort. The sky hung low, thick with cloud, flattening distance. Light filtered down in a dull, diffuse wash that made it difficult to judge how far the mountains truly were. Pines crowded closer to the road, their trunks dark with moisture, their branches interlacing overhead. Sound changed here. Engine noise was absorbed quickly. Wind did not travel cleanly. It pressed, folded, returned. Noah drove with both hands on the wheel, posture relaxed but attentive. Years of operating in uncertain terrain had trained him to read subtle cues, the angle of the road, the behavior of shadows, the way his tires responded when the ground beneath them changed composition. He did not rush. He did not hesitate. He committed to each turn only after understanding it. Valco sat upright in the passenger seat, weight slightly forward, ears lifting and rotating as if tracking signals Noah could not detect. His mouth was closed, jaw set, breath slow. The dog's gaze remained fixed on the road ahead, not scanning the trees, not distracted by movement at the edges. He looked as if he were waiting for something specific. Noah noticed. They passed a weathered sign half hidden by brush. Its lettering faded nearly to nothing. Beyond it, the road sloped upward, curving along the side of a ridge. Snow appeared in thin patches beneath the trees, lingering where sunlight failed to reach. The temperature dropped enough that Noah adjusted the heater without thinking. Cell service vanished completely. The dashboard indicator went dark. Unceremonious. He did not mind. An hour passed, then another. The forest thickened. The road thinned again, now barely wide enough for two vehicles to pass without caution. In places, runoff had carved shallow channels across the surface, forcing Noah to choose his line carefully. He slowed, navigating each obstacle with the same steady precision he had once applied to far more dangerous environments. They did not encounter another vehicle. Eventually, the GPS lost accuracy, the map lagging behind the truck's actual position. Noah pulled over at a small turnout and shut off the engine. Silence pressed in immediately, dense and complete. He stepped out, boots crunching softly on frost-hardened gravel. The air smelled different here, not just pine and damp earth, but something mineral beneath it, faint and metallic. He stood still, listening. Valco jumped down beside him and moved ahead without prompting, nose low, tail still. He circled once, then paused, ears flicking back briefly before returning. Forward. He did not bark. He did not pull. He waited. Noah checked the scene map again, then folded it and tucked it into his jacket. "All right," he said quietly. They continued. The house did not appear suddenly. There was no clearing, no dramatic reveal. Instead, Noah noticed first what was missing. The slope ahead was too smooth. The tree line broke in an unnatural way, trunks ending abruptly as if something had interrupted their growth decades earlier. Rock faces emerged where soil should have been deeper, their surfaces worn and irregular. Then he saw the angles, wood meeting stone, lines too straight to be accidental, but too restrained to draw attention. From a distance, the structure looked less like a building and more like a healed wound. Earth pulled back just enough to allow something human to exist beneath it. Noah stopped the truck and turned off the engine. The silence returned, heavier this time. Up close, the house felt deliberate. The framing was darkened by age, but intact. Timber beams disappeared directly into packed earth. Moss clung to seams where soil met wood, thick and undisturbed. The roof was not a roof in the usual sense. It was a continuation of the hillside itself, layered with dirt, grass, and low vegetation that had been allowed to grow unchecked. The structure did not rise above the mountain. It folded into it. Valco exited the truck slowly. He did not rush ahead. He circled the perimeter with measured steps, nose close to the ground. At certain points, he paused, inhaling deeply, then moved on. When he reached the front door, a heavy slab of weathered wood reinforced with iron hardware, he stopped and sat. Noah frowned. "That's new," he murmured. The door opened without resistance. Inside, the air was cool but not cold, not stale, not damp. The temperature was steady in a way that felt intentional rather than accidental. Noah stepped inside and closed the door behind him. The sound muted, absorbed. Stone flooring met his boots, solid and level. The walls were a mixture of timber and packed clay, smoothed in places by hands that had shaped them long ago. Narrow passages angled upward and inward, connecting levels carved directly into the hillside. Light entered through the small, carefully positioned windows that reflected the gray sky without revealing much of the interior from outside. The house did not expand outward, it folded inward. Noah moved slowly, lantern unlit for now, letting his eyes adjust. He expected decay, rot, the smell of abandonment. He found none of it. Some sections were cluttered with debris, collapsed shelving, rusted tools, furniture reduced to shapes rather than function. Other areas were unexpectedly clear, purposeful, order without presence. Valco crossed the threshold after a moment's hesitation. His breathing slowed, his shoulders lowered slightly. He moved inside and remained close to Noah's side. They explored in silence. By late afternoon, they reached the lowest basalt level. The air changed subtly there, pressing downward rather than circulating freely. The stone beneath Noah's boots felt denser, colder. Valko stopped. His body stiffened, ears lifted sharply, his head tilted, listening to something beneath the floor. Noah felt it then, a vibration so faint it registered more in his bones than his ears. Not movement, not danger, pressure. He stepped back. Valko did not follow. Instead, the dog turned away from the lower passage entirely and climbed upward past Noah, past the entry level, until he reached the middle tier of the house. There, he lay down near the inner wall, exhaled, and closed his eyes. He had chosen. That night, they slept inside the house. Noah told himself it was practicality. Darkness had fallen quickly. The road back was long, and the weather had begun to shift. Snow brushed lightly against the windows, whispering rather than falling. He spread blankets on the stone floor of the middle level. Valko settled beside him, body relaxed, breathing even. Noah lay awake. Outside, frost formed quickly, coating the ground in white. Inside, his breath did not fog. The air remained steady, unchanged by the cold pressing down from above. Wind moved through the trees overhead, its sound softened by layers of earth and stone. Noah thought of Sarah, of the way she lingered at the edges of decisions, preferring understanding over urgency, of the documents she had once requested, the quiet curiosity he had mistaken for academic interest. When morning came, sunlight filtered through the narrow windows, illuminating dust motes suspended in warm, stable air. Noah stepped outside and found the slope coated in frost, the truck windshield rimmed white. When he stepped back inside, warmth followed him like a held breath. He stood still for a long moment, one hand resting against the packed earth wall. This place was not warm in a comforting way. It was stable. By midday, Noah locked the door behind them. He did not say goodbye. As they drove back down the mountain, he glanced once in the rearview mirror. The house receded into the hillside, disappearing without ceremony. But the question it had raised did not. 3 days later, Noah returned. Noah Kincaid returned to the mountain before dawn, not out of urgency, but out of recognition. The road felt different this time, familiar, though no less narrow. Frost still clung to the shaded curves, and the forest still pressed close. But Noah no longer drove as a visitor. He drove as someone who had already been noticed. He had packed deliberately. Fewer clothes, more tools, a pry bar, measuring tape, a carpenter's level, a coil of rope, a small shovel, a lantern with fresh batteries, and a notebook thick enough to hold patterns rather than thoughts. Food for several days. Water. He left nothing to chance and nothing unnecessary. Valko waited by the truck before the engine turned over. He did not circle this time. He simply sat, posture upright, ears forward, as if the destination had already been agreed upon. The house emerged the same way it had before, gradually, without announcement. The slope ahead was smooth where it should not have been. The tree line broke too cleanly. Earth and timber met at angles that did not belong to erosion. Noah parked well back and shut off the engine. Silence pressed in, steady and deep. Inside, the temperature had not changed. That was the first thing Noah confirmed. He removed his jacket and hung it on a peg near the entry. His breath did not fog. The air carried the same neutral scent of earth and old wood, unchanged by the cold outside. He stood still, letting his body register the difference between expectation and reality. Valko entered behind him and moved immediately to the middle tier, settling near the inner wall. He did not investigate the lower passage. He did not hesitate. He had already made that choice. Noah spent the morning working methodically. He cleared debris from an upper alcove, stacking broken boards and rusted metal in a corner where they would not interfere. He tested the floor with measured pressure, noting where it felt dense and where it gave slightly underfoot. He ran his hand along the packed, clay walls, feeling variations in texture that suggested deliberate shaping rather than settling. The house was not improvised. That realization settled with weight. By midday, Noah noticed something else. The higher he climbed, the warmer the air became. Not dramatically, not enough to register as comfort, enough that the faint chill he carried from outside loosened its grip on his shoulders. He tested it deliberately, moving down a level, then back up again. Cooler below, steady warmth above. He closed his eyes and stood still, letting his body confirm what his mind suspected. The house was not resisting winter. It was working with it. He followed narrow ventilation slits cut into the walls, tracing their paths with his fingers. The passages angled rather than ran straight, forcing air to travel longer routes. Heat rose naturally, but here it was guided, redirected through slanted corridors and staggered ceilings. Earth mass absorbed cold and released warmth slowly, buffering, extremes rather than fighting them. A passive system. Old, deliberate, patient. Valco shadowed him for most of the afternoon, staying close without interfering. When Noah approached the lower level, the dog stopped. His shoulders tightened, his ears lifted sharply. He did not growl, he did not retreat. He refused. Noah crouched near the threshold and placed his palm flat against the stone. The surface was colder here, denser. Beneath it, he felt the same low-frequency pressure he had noticed before. Not movement, not danger, something contained. "That's enough," Noah said quietly, more to himself than to the dog. He worked instead on the middle tier, clearing a section of wall where packed clay met timber in a seam too straight to be natural. The texture here was smoother, more deliberate. He brushed away decades of dust and earth with his fingers, careful not to force anything. The outline of a square began to emerge. A panel, reinforced beneath the surface, sealed on. Purpose. Noah leaned back on his heels, heart beating a little faster than it had all day. Valco stepped closer, shoulder brushing Noah's arm. The dog did not tense. He did not relax either. He watched. Noah pressed his palm against the panel. It was warm. Not the ambient warmth of the room, something more concentrated, localized. For a brief disorienting second, Noah felt as though he were standing against something alive, not in the sense of breath or movement, but in the way systems respond to pressure. He pulled his hand away. The warmth remained. He did not open the panel, not yet. That night, snow fell lightly, just enough to hush the forest. Noah prepared a simple meal on a camp stove, the smell of warmed food rising slowly through the angled corridors. Valco ate quietly and returned to his place near the inner wall. They slept on the middle tier. Outside, frost thickened. Inside, the air held steady. Noah lay awake, listening to the wind move through trees above the waves. Hillside, its sound softened by layers of soil and stone. Nothing shifted, nothing collapsed. The house held. In the morning, Noah tested boundaries. He traced airflow with smoke from a smoldering pine needle, watching how it traveled upward through channels hidden behind walls. He mapped temperature differences using his own senses, moving slowly, noting where warmth lingered and where cold pressed harder. He marked observations in his notebook without interpretation, letting patterns speak before meaning. Valco followed, always within a few feet, but never crossing into the lowest level again. By the third day, Noah noticed a detail he had missed before. Along the inner wall of the upper tier ran a seam too precise to be accidental. The clay here was smoother, packed with care. He knelt and brushed it clean. It did not crumble. He fetched the pry bar and worked patiently, easing away packed earth without forcing it. The outline of a square panel emerged, reinforced with darkened wood beneath the surface. The seal loosened with a soft sound that felt more like release than failure. Behind it lay a narrow chamber barely wider than Noah's shoulders. The air inside was different, cooler, denser, untouched by the subtle currents that moved through the rest of the house. Noah stepped back instinctively. Valco did not. The dog leaned forward, sniffed once, then sat, alert and steady. Noah retrieved gloves and eased the panel fully aside. Inside, stacked carefully against the rear wall, were objects wrapped in oilcloth and canvas darkened by age. He carried them out one by one and laid them on the table near the window. Blueprints came first. They were yellowed but intact, drawn with meticulous precision. Cross-sections of the house revealed airflow channels, thermal mass zones, and load-bearing supports designed to distribute pressure rather than resist it. Noah recognized the symbols immediately. This was engineering, not shelter. Beneath the blueprints lay a leather-bound journal. The cover was cracked, edges softened by time. The handwriting inside was tight and disciplined, the script of someone trained to think in systems rather than stories. Lieutenant Daniel Whitaker, Corps of Engineers. The entries described an experimental structure designed for long-term winter endurance without fuel or external power. A prototype built into unstable terrain to test adaptability rather than dominance. The mountain had been chosen not for beauty, but for pressure. The journal darkened as Noah turned pages. A miscalculation. subsurface stress, a collapse during testing, 2 men trapped, 1 survived, 1 did not. The project was halted, officially deferred, unofficially abandoned. The final entry was brief. If this place endures, it will not be because we were right, but because the mountain allowed it. Noah closed the journal slowly. As he gathered the remaining papers, an envelope slid free from the bottom of the stack. Unlike the others, it was newer. The paper had aged but not yellowed. A familiar handwriting marked the front. Sarah. Noah froze. He sat at the table for a long moment, elbows resting on worn wood, staring at the envelope as if it might move on its own. Then he opened it. Ethan, if you're reading this, it means you listened. To Valco or to yourself. Maybe both. This place isn't an inheritance. It's a responsibility. I didn't understand all of it when I started looking, but I understood enough to know it wasn't meant to stay buried. Whatever happens next, promise me you won't walk away without knowing why it was built. Noah folded the letter carefully and placed it back inside the journal. The weight in his chest was not grief this time. It was clarity. She had not sent him here to give him something. She had sent him here to finish something. The sound reached the house before the people did. It was low and mechanical, distant but unmistakable, a steady hum that did not belong to wind or wildlife. Noah Kincaid paused mid-step on the middle tier, lantern held loosely at his side, and listened. The vibration traveled through the stone beneath his boots, faint but persistent, as if the mountain itself were carrying the message upward. Valco reacted instantly. He rose from his place near the inner wall, ears lifting sharply, body angling toward the sound. A low note gathered in his chest. Not a growl, not a bark, but a warning that lived deeper than either. Noah moved to the doorway and stepped outside. Morning mist clung to the trees, blurring distance and flattening depth. Beyond the slope, through gaps in the forest, he caught sight of movement along a lower access road. 2 trucks crawled forward at a deliberate pace, their shapes softened by fog. One carried equipment secured beneath tarps. The other bore markings he did not recognize. Surveyors. The words settled with immediate clarity. Noah had seen enough terrain compromised by people who believed measurements equaled understanding. He watched as the vehicle stopped and men stepped out, their voices faint but audible when the wind shifted. Valco pressed closer to his leg. Noah did not approach, not yet. He spent the rest of the morning reviewing the blueprints and journal entries again, aligning diagrams with the contours he had observed firsthand. He marked areas where Valco had refused to step, where pressure felt heavier, where warmth shifted unexpectedly. The patterns overlapped more cleanly than he liked. By early afternoon, a figure appeared at the edge of the clearing. The man approached on foot, moving with unhurried confidence, hands visible, posture open. He was tall but slightly stooped, his frame lean in the way of someone accustomed to uneven ground rather than desks. His beard was gray and kept short, not out of vanity but practicality. Deep lines traced his face, carved there by years of wind and sun. He wore a Forest Service jacket faded nearly to green-gray, patched at the elbows, and boots worn smooth at the edges. Valco noticed him immediately. The dog stood but did not advance, posture neutral, alert without aggression. "Mind if I come closer?" the man called, stopping a respectful distance away. Noah studied him for a moment, then nodded once. The man stepped forward and extended a hand. "Marcus Hale, Ranger. Been working this range longer than I care to count." His grip was firm, but not testing. Noah released it quickly. "Noah." Marcus's eyes flicked briefly to the house behind him, then back to Noah. "Didn't expect anyone staying up here," he said. "That place hasn't had company in a long time." Valco shifted slightly, positioning himself between the 2 men without blocking either. "Dog's paying attention," Marcus noted. "That's usually a good sign." "He listens," Noah replied. Marcus nodded, as if that explained more than words could. They walked a short distance from the house to a fallen log worn smooth by years of weather. Marcus sat carefully, resting his forearms on his knees. He spoke without rushing, choosing words with the same economy he used his movements. "You've probably noticed the trucks," he said. "Geological survey crew. They've been sniffing around this mountain on and off for years." Noah said nothing. "Copper veins," Marcus continued. "Maybe something deeper. The only reason they haven't pushed harder before is access. Roads weren't worth the trouble." "And now?" Noah asked. Marcus glanced toward the slope where the trucks had disappeared. Now, there's a road again. Noah felt the tension settle deeper in his chest. Marcus studied the house once more. That structure, he said carefully, was built to handle cold, but not the way cabins usually do. Noah waited. My father worked civil engineering during the Cold War, Marcus went on. Didn't talk much about it, but I remember maps spread across our kitchen table. Hills circled in red pencil. This one was always marked. Test site, Noah said. Marcus shrugged. That's the polite term. Experimental structures. Prototypes meant to survive long winters without fuel. Some were dismantled, some collapsed. One was left. Noah thought of Whitaker's journal, of the sealed chamber, of the pressure below. Before either man could speak again, Valco's head snapped up. His ears rose sharply, tail stiffening. The vibration returned, stronger this time, traveling through the ground with unmistakable intent. Marcus felt it too. His posture changed, shoulders tightening. You feel that? He asked quietly. Noah nodded. The sound cut off abruptly. The hum vanished. Silence followed, heavy and unnatural. Marcus exhaled slowly. They're testing, he said, and they're not being careful. Over the next 2 days, the pattern repeated. Whenever machinery approached certain sections of the slope, Valco reacted first. He refused to cross specific patches of ground, pulling Noah back with surprising force. At night, he paced near the doorway, stopping to stare into darkness where engines had passed earlier that day. Noah began marking the areas Valco avoided. The alignment was exact. They matched the sections of the house where the air felt heaviest, where the vibration beneath the stone floor registered most clearly. Marcus returned twice, walking the perimeter with Noah, listening more than he spoke. You ever see a mountainside collapse from the inside out? Marcus asked one afternoon. Noah nodded once. Training exercise, he said. Underground pressure released where it shouldn't have been. Marcus's expression tightened. If they drill into the wrong pocket, he said, they won't just bring down a slope. They'll destabilize everything above it. That night, Noah sat alone in the middle tier, lantern light casting long shadows across the packed clay walls. Valco lay beside him, head on his paws, eyes open. She knew, Noah said quietly, not looking down. Didn't she? Valco did not move. He did not look away. Just before dawn, a tremor passed through the house, subtle, easy to dismiss. Except Valco rose instantly, every muscle taut, and pressed himself against the inner wall. Outside, the distant whine of machinery cut off mid-note. Noah placed his hand against the wall. The vibration was gone. Whatever pressure had been building beneath the mountain had shifted just enough to be felt, and just enough to be dangerous. The next morning, Noah followed Marcus down to the temporary survey site. 5 men worked efficiently, their movements practiced and impersonal, hard hats, reflective vests, equipment arranged with clinical precision. Their supervisor stepped forward as Noah approached. Caleb? Turner was in his early 40s, broad-shouldered, clean-shaven, with a confident smile that came easily. His posture suggested comfort with authority, the kind built by systems that usually bent in his favor. We're just running tests, Caleb said, extending a hand Noah did not take. Nothing invasive yet. Yet, Noah repeated. Caleb shrugged. Standard procedure. Valco stayed close to Noah, body angled toward the slope rather than the men. Dog doesn't like our gear, Caleb remarked. He doesn't like unstable ground, Noah replied. That earned a raised eyebrow. The meeting ended without confrontation, but the tension lingered like static in the air. Back at the house, Noah stood in the doorway and looked out over the forest. The beauty of the place had sharpened, edged now with consequence. The house was not just shelter, it was a warning. And Noah Kincaid, whether he wanted the role or not, had stepped into the narrow space between ignorance and collapse. The warning did not come with drama. It arrived as a sound so sharp and brief, it might have been mistaken for a rifle crack, echoing once through the trees and then vanishing. Noah Kincaid felt it first in his feet, a sudden loss of resistance, the ground shifting in a way that did not belong to wind or settling soil. He had time to register surprise, not fear. Valco moved faster than thought. The dog lunged, teeth catching the back of Noah's jacket, his weight dropping low as he pulled sideways, with a force born of certainty rather than panic. The earth where Noah had been standing collapsed inward, stones sliding, soil giving way to a shallow sink that widened with a grinding sound. Noah hit the ground hard on his shoulder, breath knocked from his chest, gravel biting into his palms. The noise brought shouts from below. Machinery cut off mid-motion. Men ran. Someone swore, voice cracking. Valco stood over Noah, legs braced, chest vibrating with a low warning that was not aggression but alarm. His ears tracked movement downslope. His eyes never left Noah's face. "I'm up," Noah said, forcing air back into his lungs. "I'm up." Marcus Hale reached them seconds later, grabbing Noah's arm and hauling him back onto stable ground with a strength that surprised both of them. Marcus's face had gone pale beneath the weathered lines, his jaw set tight. "That," he said sharply, turning toward the survey site, "is what I've been trying to tell you." Caleb Turner stood a short distance away, hard hat tilted back, eyes fixed on the collapse. His earlier confidence had drained from his posture. He swallowed once before speaking. "No one should have been standing there. No one should have been drilling there," Noah replied, voice even. Silence followed, thick and uncomfortable. The ground had made its point. Work was suspended within the hour. Tape went up, calls were made, engineers were summoned. The mountain returned to stillness as if nothing had happened, but the tension remained, lodged beneath the surface where it could not be ignored. For the next 48 hours, Noah documented. He did what he had always done when stakes were high and information incomplete. He slowed down and gathered data. He spread Whitaker's blueprints across the table in the middle tier, weighing them down with smooth stones. He overlaid them with hand-drawn sketches of the slope, fault lines Marcus remembered from decades of patrols, and the areas Valco had refused to cross. The alignment was undeniable. Pressure pockets mapped cleanly to instability zones. Airflow channels corresponded to thermal buffering that reduced surface freeze-thaw stress. The house was not separate from the mountain. It was an interface. Valco stayed close as Noah worked, sometimes standing, sometimes sitting, occasionally moving to position himself above specific points on the stone floor. Each time he did, Noah checked his notes. Each time, the readings, temperature shifts, subtle vibrations, confirmed the choice. "You're treating him like a sensor," Marcus observed one evening, leaning against the doorway, arms crossed. "He is one," Noah said without looking up. Marcus nodded once. "Better than most I've worked with." They submitted findings through official channels that moved slowly by design. Marcus leveraged old contacts, quiet conversations, favors owed not because they were asked, but because they were remembered. Reports were filed, reviews requested, temporary suspensions extended. The house became central to the argument, not as a residence, as evidence. Proof that someone had once understood how to build with unstable terrain rather than against it. Proof that pressure could be guided, not challenged. That survival did not require domination. Late one night, as Noah compared thermal readings against Whitaker's diagrams, Valco rose suddenly and moved to the center of the room. He stood perfectly still, then sat directly above a section Noah had not yet mapped. Noah followed the dog's gaze downward. The temperature reading dropped 3 degrees in seconds. Below them, something shifted, not collapsed, not fractured, adjusted. The mountain was responding. The county inspector arrived the following morning. Laura Penfield was in her mid-50s, short and solidly built, with iron-gray hair cut close to her head. Her face carried the expression of someone who had spent years telling people things they did not want to hear. Her eyes missed little, her tone missed nothing. "I don't care about sentiment," she said as she stepped inside the house. "I care about liability." "Then you should care about stability," Noah replied. Laura walked the tiers without speaking, pressing her palm against the packed earth walls, the same way Noah had days earlier. She crouched, measured airflow, listened. When she reached the middle tier, she paused beside Valco, who sat watching her with calm intensity. "And the dog?" she asked. "He listens," Noah said. Laura snorted softly. "Smartest thing in this room." The inspection lasted hours. By the end, Laura's skepticism had shifted, not to approval, but to a different kind of caution. "I'll file my report," she said. "It won't make everyone happy." "I don't need happy," Noah replied. The decision arrived quietly days later, not with celebration, not with relief loud enough to echo. An amended notice slid through the narrow slot beside the door. The paper was thinner than earlier warnings, the language less sharp. Rare engineered structure, historical and technical significance acknowledged. Extraction activity suspended pending permanent review. Noah read it standing at the table. Valco sat at his side. He did not smile. He simply nodded. Marcus arrived that afternoon, walking the last stretch of road. He moved slower than before, the cold settling into joints that had learned too many seasons the hard way. He stood beside Noah at the edge of the ridge, watching sunlight catch on exposed stone. "You could still walk away," Marcus said. "No," Noah replied. "Not now." The mountain exhaled. Machinery was removed piece by piece. Bright markers disappeared. The access road grew quiet again, reclaiming its uneven shape beneath fallen needles and thawing soil. Valko noticed first. He stopped pacing at night. The low restlessness that had marked his sleep since their arrival faded. Noah noticed too. He worked without urgency now, repairing what needed repair, leaving alone what worked. He learned the house's rhythms, the way warmth rose slowly in the afternoon, the way the middle tier held temperature through the night, the way the lower stone floor released yesterday's heat with patience. One evening, as dusk settled early, Noah returned Whitaker's journal to the chamber where it belonged. He left the panel open this time, not as invitation, but acknowledgement. Valko watched, tail giving a single, lazy thump. Later, Noah dreamed of Sarah. She stood at the edge of the mountain, hair loose, posture unburdened. She did not speak. She looked at the house, then at him. When he woke, the dream did not cling. It passed like weather. Outside, snow began to fall, light and unhurried, softening the edges of the world. For the first time in years, Noah felt no need to brace for impact. The ground had spoken, and he had listened. Winter settled fully into the mountains without ceremony. Snow arrived in quiet layers, not heavy enough to announce itself, just persistent enough to soften edges and slow time. The forest learned new shapes under white weight. Branches bowed, paths vanished. Sound carried differently now, muffled and deliberate. The mountain did not retreat from the cold. It absorbed it. Noah Kincaid stayed, not because there was nowhere else to go, and not because the house demanded it. He stayed because leaving no longer felt like neutrality. It felt like abandonment. The days reshaped themselves without asking permission. Morning came later. Light lingered shorter. Noah adapted the way he always had, by paying attention. He learned when the upper tier warmed fastest, when the middle level held steady through the night, when the lower stone floor released yesterday's heat with patience rather than generosity. He learned where water preferred to travel beneath snowmelt, where ice formed first, where silence settled deepest. He repaired what needed repair. A cracked beam reinforced, not replaced. A ventilation slit cleared, not widened. A loose stone reset exactly where it had been. He did not improve the house. He listened to it. Valko changed too. The dog slept through the nights now, body loose, breath slow. The restlessness that had once pulled him to the doorway at every distant sound faded. He still listened, always, but the listening no longer carried urgency. When Noah moved through the house, Valko followed without tension, choosing his places with ease. The middle tier remained his anchor, but he no longer avoided the edges of it. He trusted the ground again. Marcus Hale visited less often, but when he did, he stayed longer. He arrived on foot now, parking his truck further down the ridge, respecting the mountain's preference for fewer disturbances. Age had curved him slightly more, the cold settling into joints that had carried him across too many seasons. But his eyes remained sharp. "You're settling in," Marcus observed one afternoon, watching Noah split wood with measured rhythm. "I'm staying," Noah corrected. Marcus nodded. "There's a difference." They spoke of small things, weather patterns, trail closures, reports that still needed filing even if no one asked for them. Marcus spoke once of retirement, not as a plan but as an idea that had never quite fit him. He left before dark, as he always did, the forest swallowing the sound of his steps. Laura Penfield returned only once. This time she came without a clipboard. She walked the house slowly, hands tucked into her coat pockets, eyes thoughtful. She did not rush. She did not interrupt. When she finished, she stood near the doorway and looked back at the interior, at the way light settled and air moved. "They'll leave you alone now," she said. "Mostly." Noah accepted that answer for what it was. "Ever think about what happens after you?" Laura asked. Noah considered the question longer than she expected. "Every day," he said. She nodded once. "Good. That's how places like this survive." She left without saying goodbye. Noah did not watch her go. Researchers began reaching out quietly. Emails from universities. Phone calls from engineers who asked careful questions and did not push when answers were slow. Noah responded to some, declined others. He did not become a spokesperson. He became a caretaker. The journal stayed where it belonged. Noah returned Whitaker's blueprints to the chamber, not sealed away, but not displayed. The panel remained open, not as invitation, but acknowledgement. The house did not hide anymore, it simply waited. One evening, as dusk arrived early and the forest darkened into layers of blue and gray, Noah brewed coffee and sat on the middle tier, back against the packed earth wall. Valko lay beside him, chin resting on his paws, eyes half closed. Snow fell lightly outside. Unhurried, Noah thought of Sarah, not as she had been at the end, still, pale, unreachable, but as she had lived, sleeves rolled up, hair pulled back and failing to stay that way. Standing over a table scattered with documents, brow furrowed not in worry, but concentration. The way she lingered at the edges of decisions, preferring understanding to certainty. She had not sent him here to be saved. She had trusted him to stay. Later that night, Noah dreamed again. Sarah stood at the edge of the ridge, the mountains spread behind her like a held breath. She did not speak. She looked at the house, then at him. There was no urgency in her expression, no instruction, only recognition. When Noah woke, the dream did not cling. It passed cleanly, like weather moving on. Just before dawn, stillness arrived, not silence, something deeper. The kind that comes when pressure has been redistributed, when systems have adjusted enough to rest. Noah lay still, listening. Valko slept beside him, chest rising and falling evenly. Outside, snow continued to fall, softening the world without asking it to change. Noah sat up slowly. For the first time since leaving the Navy, since losing Sarah, since learning how easily the ground could give way beneath certainty, he felt no need to prepare for impact. No exit routes mapped in his mind, no contingencies rehearsed. He rose, pulled on his boots, and stepped outside. The forest was transformed, every branch outlined in white, every sound absorbed. The mountain stood unchanged, not victorious, not defeated, held. Noah breathed in the cold air and let it settle. He understood then that the house had not been waiting for a savior. It had been waiting for someone willing to stay without conquering it, someone who did not try to improve it into failure or extract it into silence, someone who listened. Noah did not feel chosen, he felt allowed. As winter deepened, life simplified. Meals were quiet, movements deliberate, days shaped by light and temperature, rather than obligation. Noah repaired what needed repair. He left alone what worked. Valko walked the ridge each morning, confident now, choosing paths he had once avoided. He paused often, not for danger, but out of habit, out of care. Noah stood beside him, hands in his jacket pockets, flannel worn thin at the cuffs. The house did not save him. It did not heal him. It created the conditions in which he could stand upright again. And that, Noah knew, was enough. Sometimes the miracle is not the house, not the mountain, not even the rescue we can point to and explain. Sometimes the miracle is quieter. It is the moment God places us exactly where we are needed, not to escape the world, but to stand within it, not to be saved instantly, but to be strengthened slowly, not to erase pain, but to give it meaning. Noah was not chosen because he was perfect. He was chosen because he listened, and perhaps that is how God often works. Through patience, through attention, through the courage to stay when walking away would be easier. If you are watching this today carrying grief, exhaustion, or unanswered questions, remember this. God may not remove the mountain in front of you, but He can teach you how to stand on it without falling. The miracle may already be happening quietly in your life, through a loyal companion, a responsibility you didn't ask for, a second chance you almost ignored, or a moment of stillness you nearly rushed past. If this story touched your heart, please share it with someone who might need hope today. Leave a comment and tell us where you're watching from. We would love to pray for you by name and place. And if you believe no one should face fear, loss, or silence alone, subscribe to the channel so we can continue sharing stories that heal, restore faith, and remind us that we are never forgotten. May God bless you, may He protect you, and may He guide your steps, today and always.